Hi, my name is Erin. I'm a level designer at Cardboard Sword. Previously, I was a QA intern at Stu Games, and I recently finished my game art degree from Escape Studios. This is a talk about games industry accessibility for low income and working class people, and I gave it a splash damage last year for the Black History Month event. So, if this is a topic you would like to learn more about, please keep listening and enjoy. So I am mixed race. This is my mum and me in the 90s. I'm from a British, Kenyan, and Guyanese heritage. I grew up in a single parented, low income, working class family in Wolverhampton, West Midlands. So lots of factors here that statistically means it is harder for me to get into games. Today, as we have a brief amount of time, I'm going to focus on these two elements. How does being low income and working class affect access into the games industry? So, how are video games and consoles introduced to children? Parents. Parents with both nostalgia and a disposable income. Nostalgia is your mum or dad remembering their first console, gifted on Christmas morning so they buy one for you. Nostalgia is awareness that video games exist. A disposable income is the money a family has left over after paying their taxes or bills. The bigger the income, the bigger leeway to spend however they wish. These two factors are the gateway to gaming, and traditionally, this is the story you would hear from middle class game devs once they are asked how they got their start into the industry. But what happens if you remove one or both? With nostalgia removed, awareness of games from a young age dissipates. Lack of nostalgia for a working class parent could be down to generational poverty. If they didn't get into games as a child or young adult, how do they know to introduce games to their children? Now, what happens if you remove a disposable income too? Games are expensive, so if after paying taxes and bills, a family's income is small, why would they spend money on a non-necessity like gaming? This was my reality. My mum is a first-generation immigrant born in the UK into an impoverished family. She had no nostalgia from playing games as a child, or a disposable income as a single parent supporting herself and I. This meant that I did not know video games existed until around primary school. With these barriers in place, I got into games via my school friends. Seeing them play on their DSs on coach strips made me aware of gaming for the first time. Then, without a disposable income, we saved up for years and bought my first console at aged 11. And of course, I soon after developed my first crush on a video game character, Professor Layton, specifically Professor Layton with a sword. Then, a few years later, I stumbled across YouTube Let's Plays, which allowed me to explore next generation blockbuster games on PlayStation and Xbox for the first time. YouTube was the game changer. Why? Because via Let's Plays, the barrier to knowledge was lifted. No longer did I need to rely on friends, my mum, or hundreds of pounds, but just the click of a button. Since I was a budding writer, I spent the summer before sixth form watching PewDiePie play The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, and Beyond Two Souls. During this playthrough, it suddenly occurred to me that people make games. Because I had no idea where to start, I naively emailed Quantic Dream and asked how to get into writing for video games, and if they were hiring for writers. On the 28th of October 2013, a writer responded with a kind rejection to my offer of work. However, he followed it up with, "But I can share with you some ideas about writing that I wish I had known when I was younger." And his generous subsequent advice is what stuck in my head and spurred me onwards for years to come. This was the first time I reached out to a dev for advice, and it would become a habit that would open the door to the industry for me later. Right, let's go back to our main question. How does being low income and working class affect access into the games industry? We know now that as a child and young adult, access to games is dependent on nostalgia and a disposable income. And as a quick fix, Awareness via school friends, saving up bits of money for years, and watching Let's Plays on YouTube are very light patches for the problem of games' inaccessibility. But how does being working class and low income affect someone pursuing a job in games in their late teens and 20s? There is no plan B for us. I knew there wouldn't be one. Once I made my decision, I didn't have the money to correct myself or keep putting pressure on my single mother. Personally, around this time, my mum was now unemployed, so I definitely knew that if games was what I wanted, I had to make it work first time, because I was on my own. My first step was I decided to study a games-related degree at university. I felt like there was more opportunity to grow in games in London, so I targeted degrees in the South East over options back home, even though I knew it was a risk. I also knew I was missing a bunch of technical knowledge, and by doing a games degree, I could increase my skills if I learnt the software used to make games. I also was completely reliant on using the uni's machinery, as I did not have a PC back home suitable for game development. I got into Escape Studios, that was the easy part, but navigating trying to find somewhere to live in London when I couldn't even afford the train fare to said city was anxiety inducing to say the least. It was a looming giant barrier for me as a poor student till a distant relative, my aunt, offered to house me for my first year at a reduced rent. I was in luck? As a working class student living away from home, I had a tighter budget than my friends, but I was super money conscious. All was going well. The new year passed by, and I was already acing my exams. Wait. 13th of March 2017. I want her gone by 8 p.m., or I'm locking the door and keeping her things. My aunt decided to kick me out of her house mid-term. We still don't know why she offered to take care of me and house me, but it had clearly been a ruse for 6 months. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I was dealing with a lot of psychological trauma from being verbally abused by her for months. I'd been blocking out because. And I wanted my degree so badly. I just wanted to be like everyone else at university, so I kept pressing on. I am very glad to be able to tell you that a friend took me in. That night, we packed all my things that she'd thrown outside and drove miles to the coast of Kent. I moved into my friend's home with his family for 3 months so that I could finish off my first year in peace. Unfortunately, my degree took an irreparable hit, and getting a first or a 2-1 did not seem possible anymore. Change of plans. How does being working class and low income affect someone pursuing a job in games in their late teens and 20s? Well, it's February 2018, nearly a year after what happened with my aunt, and I realised that I was essentially a year behind my classmates. My declining mental health meant I could not focus anymore in class. I had severe PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and class was moving too quickly for me to catch up, and I certainly did not have the funds to try and get private therapy. However, in my spring term, it dawned on me that a good games candidate needs two things: a great portfolio, and great connections. So while I lagged behind in technical game skills, I decided to make sure that I accommodated with even better networking skills. So this was my next plan. I wanted to attend free indie games meetups because I could not afford a ticket to the bigger festivals like EGX. I was aiming to make new friends in the industry, friends being key here, approaching all devs with not the selfish intention to use them to reach a goal, but to just talk to and treat devs like normal people, something I think a lot of students fail to do at events like these. Lastly, I wanted to grow my Twitter. I saw that a lot of devs were using it over LinkedIn to socialize and talk and network, and I figured it would be a good investment. So each event, I would grab people's Twitter and follow them back. Easy stuff. And at this point, I want to stop and answer a question that might be in your heads, because I know it's in mine. Why was I so premeditative? Because there's no plan B. I find that for me, being low income and working class usually means you're born with a built in risk assessor that teaches you to be premeditative, so you don't make costly mistakes. It is an exhausting trait. I had already been rescued once, and now that I couldn't salvage my degree as quickly as I needed to, I knew the best way to still pursue a job in games was by meeting the people behind them. I knew there would be enough time to work on my portfolio, but I had a limited amount of time to connect with people. Let's say all went to pot and I couldn't stay in London. At least I'd made the effort to meet devs and make friends, so I wasn't a stranger if I reached out for mentorship or advice. Networking was my lifeline. A great coincidental example of how networking is ridiculously helpful and will pay you back is by taking a look at the first talk I went to. It was hosted at my university and about getting into games. On the panel were these lovely people. So I did some research and found this gem. Here they are, hope they don't mind. From left to right, there's Jess, Adrienne, Anissa, and Chris. Well, sadly, Jess and I's paths never crossed again. Adrienne ended up mentoring me several times throughout the course of my degree in production. Anissa did the same, kindly offering me a lot of her time and advice at many of the events I went to. For the past 2 years, I've also been a part of her mentorship program, Limit Break. And lastly, Chris messaged me a job advert for a design role. And now we're co-workers. So it's easy to see that networking and forming connections and friendships in the industry is an invaluable way for working class and low income people to help get a leg up into the industry. And sadly, often a lot of opportunities are passed around through established relationships. So it's smart to invest in growing your pool of connections in the industry. How does being working class and low income affect someone pursuing a job in games in their late teens and 20s? You're more scared of failure because I knew that there was no easy way back, and I was so close to the end. Constantly, I scoured for opportunities to give me an extra edge over other candidates. I was particularly relentless after I finished my third year. And due to a mix of timing and those networking connections again coming to the rescue, I managed to find work experience the summer before my master's. I worked at Us Two Games as a QA intern on Assemble with Care for a week. What they probably don't know is that when this job landed, I was running out of money. This opportunity came late August, close to term time again. I was so out of pocket that on the day I was supposed to start, an unexpected standing order went out of my account, taking the last of the money for the week. I was ready to go, and I couldn't even afford the tube ride there. A friend had to bail me out, and the pay from this week paid for my food till uni started again, and I got my student finance. I had been suffering with imposter syndrome for years due to my trauma and academic challenges, but working at Us Two with the lovely team for a week restored a lot of confidence in myself. They truly pulled me out of the dark. How does being low income and working class affect access into the games industry? As a young adult, I was aware that I had no plan B, so I was pushed to be more meticulous and plan out my moves methodically. It resulted in me being perhaps a bit more premeditative than my peers, who had access to a PC at home, or parents they could move home to, or bail them out if they got stuck. But I think that worked to my advantage. University gave me a space to learn technical skills I couldn't learn on my own. I stayed on to do the masters so I could get back my lost year and build a level designer's portfolio. And I'm happy to share that I built my grade back up and got my 2-1. I recognized that connections in the industry could support me in the long run, so I took time to network online via Twitter and in person at indie meetups, and those connections years later turned into friends, mentors, and co-workers. And by doing work experience and seeking opportunities, I was able to restore confidence in myself as well as be able to spice up my CV with an achievement. But if you look at the statistics, I really should not be here. 2% of people working in games are black. 2% of people working in games are mixed. Women account for only 28% of the games industry, and only 14% of this group are of BAME descent. 62% of game workers grew up in a household where the main income earner held a managerial or professional job. Only 7% of designers in the games industry are of BAME descent. The statistics say that I should not be here, but I am, and I am highly conscious of the fact that this may have been aided by the fact that I am a mixed black woman with lighter skin, and this gives me privilege. Therefore, barriers I have overcome have more than possibly been aided by the fact that I look white passing. If I was a black woman with darker skin, there's a good chance my story would have turned out entirely differently, or I may not be here at all. I grew up listening from my mother how racism impacted her career and barred her from growing in the design industry, and I hope that now I am in a stable position, I can use my privilege and work to lift up other black women who look like her. So, how do we attract more working class and low income people into the games industry? Well, let's go back to the start, to the core. How are video games and consoles introduced to children? Parents, right? Parents with both nostalgia and a disposable income? This model is not reliable for making games accessible. Instead of relying solely on parents who may be facing generational poverty, first, awareness should come from educators. Educators can be teachers in class going over design or code, or professionals creating charities to teach young people living in impoverished areas about how to make games. We cannot hope that poor young people will just stumble across our industry one day. Think about how likely that will happen. Think about how much Wi-Fi, a data plan, a PC, or a mobile phone costs a family in poverty. For poor young people to grow up believing that they can make it in games, we must reach out to them first and show them it is possible. So, if you're a game developer emotionally affected by the points I raised in this talk, seek out and support organizations that are tirelessly working to educate underprivileged kids and tell them that they can make it into the games industry, like Digital Schoolhouse, Intergames, Limit Break Mentorship, and BAFTA's Young Game Designers. Lastly, instead of a disposable income, hardware should be more affordable. And on top of an education, we should be working to make sure that young aspiring game developers have the tools to practice their craft. How do we expect our industry to diversify if finally aware, impoverished young people can't put together a portfolio because they can't work comfortably at home on a PC or are unable to prepare for an opportunity, entry exam, or interview? We've seen how Xbox have been brilliantly working to make consoles more affordable, or the Epic Store's free PC games each week. But now this financial accessibility needs to extend to all corners of the market, especially with computers and broadband access. It is true that the cultural feeling of being working class never goes away once you've made it into a stable career. So I ask that those of us who have made it and remember what it was like before, make it your mission to lift up future aspiring working class and low income developers. To my working, middle, and upper class peers alike, please note, games is currently a luxury industry. Do we really want to keep making games purely for people who can afford luxury products? Thank you so much for listening to this talk. And if you enjoyed it, please follow me if you like on Twitter at Erin Dipper. And yeah, have a great day. Bye.